Hey guys, so I've done a lot of map guides before and I've done Volskaya before, but after two different changes to Volskaya, I figured it was time to give it a quick re-look. So I'm going to be giving you guys the strategy that I recommend on Volskaya and what the map entails. So for everyone who's getting into the competitive scene, I highly recommend checking this out, as well as anyone just new to the map. So for those that are new to the map, Volskaya is a map that has some unique camps, and we'll talk a lot about them when we get there. But essentially, this is a map that has a major objective that's going to spawn in this zone, and then you have to leave at least one person on this zone for 100 seconds, and you can fight over the zone to contest the zone so that the enemies will have to be on the zone for even longer. Or if you hold on a zone for a certain amount of time and then they get on a zone, etc., etc., etc. We'll see how it works when we get there. It will go from this zone to this zone, down to this zone, and then it will repeat. When you complete this one zone, you will be getting a protector. This protector is a giant mechanical robot that can be driven by one person, and then there is also a gunner spot for another person. Having two people in the driver and gunner positions, one each, you will find yourself in a position where you get bonuses. You get a 20% bonus. I believe it's 25% bonus in stats if you have a driver and also a gunner. Pretty straightforward, but they did change some things. So, for example, the Q of the driver, the charge, deals 500% increased damage to structures. That means if it normally does 100 damage for a charge, you're actually going to be doing 600 damage for that charge. As far as the gunner's damage does 50% damage less to structures for some of its abilities. So you want to be using those abilities primarily on heroes. I'll talk a little bit about the strategy for the driver and the gunner when we get to the first objective of the game. Now, let's talk about what we should be doing for this game as far as the changes. So let's pause for a second and let's look at the camps. So this camp right here is a camp that was just picked up, and it is 3 ranged units. These units will outrange towers, meaning that if this one that red team just picked up pushes all the way into here, they will stand right about here and they can shoot at the towers without the towers shooting at them. They're really great if they're left alone, meaning that if you can get those at a good time to where the enemy has to go and deal with that, but then if they deal with it, they lose the objective, then you're going to be in a really good spot. The best time to go for this particular camp is around 2:15, so that when the objective spawns at 3 minutes, you're usually done with the camp about 2:45. You picked up the camp, it goes to about here, and then you guys fight at the objective. As you're fighting at the objective, it pushes in and starts dealing structure damage. If left alone, it's going to do a lot. The way you counter this is by giving up a good 15 seconds of the point, clearing it, and then going back down. Most competitive teams will have both teams getting that objective at that camp at the perfect time that they both clash in the middle, right at about 3 minutes. Then, whichever team ends up holding the point the first time, the other team will then push it in and destroy the front wall. When most of the team leaves to go defend the front wall, then the other team will then reclaim the point. This allows it to where there's a back and forth between the two teams, and both teams have a lot of situations where they can come back ahead and prep for it. During this time, the team that gets the most turrets will end up having an advantage. What I mean by that is there are these camps right here that spawn also at 1 minute. If you take out both of these, you will be able to get this turret and use it wherever you want to, meaning you can drop a turret down during one of these objectives. Because this camp respawns in every 3 minutes, if you pick it up at 1 minute, I believe it's actually 2:30, but we'll see that in a second. If you pick up this turret at 1 minute or as fast as you can, then if you do exactly what I said before, where you trade off the point so that you can get more advantages up at top lane, then what you're going to have is the possibility of getting 2 turrets before one objective. This means that if you really want to win this objective, you can have 2 different turrets for it. And these camps are extremely valuable on this map not just in the direct sense of being valuable, but there's actually some psychology in how we utilize tools as people. So all of the different tools on this map can be used in a lot of ways, and it really affects our psychology and the psychology of the people against us. Harvard actually ran an entire study utilizing people and crows, and they found that after creating a tool or using a tool that was already created, crows, like people, would find themselves having a lot more confidence when it comes to that task that they were actually set out to do. So it's the same idea with this objective. This confidence really helps out in a lot of situations. You don't want your team walking away from an objective that you're doing good on, which is why this is such a unique thing. The more tools you have available, the more confidence your team has, the less confidence the enemy team has, and you might get one of those situations where 2 people go in while 2 people go out. And if you can get in that situation, you automatically win the objective and the team fight and another objective, and it's super easy. So, utilizing these turret cams is highly effective for not just winning the objectives outright, but increasing the confidence of your team and making it easier in the future. Finally, there is a last camp right here, and this is often called either a support camp or a heal camp. Now, the support camp is a big robot that does a good chunk of damage and has a good amount of health. When you kill this, it will drop an item that will restore health and mana. I believe it's 40% over the entire duration, so that's a huge amount of healing, and that's more mana that really anyone can ever do, allowing you to essentially hold out on a zone even further than you normally would. Imagine having a Malfurion who could have both ultimates at the same time, using Tranquility to keep his team alive and a Silence. Well, it's pretty much what it's like to get this. You can have your healer take a more aggressive build or aggressive playstyle while you're having that extra healing from that camp. You can see that both teams do go for their camps before the objective spawns, so we will both have 1 turret. But because the respawn time is 2 minutes and 30 seconds, there's the correction anyways, if we would have gotten this at 1 minute, or at least 1:30, if it took us 30 minutes or 30 seconds to actually grab it, then we would have another camp available just 2 minutes and 30 seconds later, which would actually be at about 4 minutes. So at 4 minutes, you would have the opportunity to grab 2 turret cams, as well as still having the opportunity to do anything else. As far as the draft, you can see that blue team did decide to go for an Abathur here to soak the lane and to also give value through the shields. It's a challenging hero because you don't really gain anything for your team fights in the early portions of the game. You effectively don't have that extra body to eat up a couple shots. You don't have the extra abilities, so you oftentimes will lose the first objective of the game. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the recent patch and how the scaling is being changed. So let me pause the game for a second and I will talk about this really quick. I talked about this in a video, but I really wanted to focus on it for Volskaya. The health is increased, the scaling is increased, the health scaling over time has been increased, and the basic attack damage has been increased, the charge damage has been increased, and the charge damage to structure has been increased. What this means is that the objectives are going to scale much better, especially after 5 minutes into the game and even further into the later areas after the first objective. To the point that I've almost found that it's best to give the first objective and to hold on to all of your tools so that you can just essentially get a really powerful objective in the second area, where you hold on to your tools, you have 4 different turrets, and then a heal camp, and you just drop down everything right as you get it to about 90% and just automatically win the next objective. Because this first objective of the game doesn't scale very well, and it really doesn't do that much. You can see that they maybe get a couple structures here, and that's about it. Now, I will also say that I kind of don't like their strategy. What's normally best to do with the first protector, if you are driving the first protector, is go straight up and destroy the fountain. And that Abathur almost died right there. But if you can destroy this fountain, because the next objective is always top lane. So if you do win the first objective, head up top lane, see if you can't destroy the fountain, as you'll get a nice advantage over the next objective. Next time the objective pops up, I will talk about the skills and how to use it, but we'll get there when we get there. So during the time in between the two objectives, the best bet is to plan out your camps and plan out how you're going to get the most value out of all of the tools that are available on the map. Usually, people will just grab the siege camp right away because the next objective is top and it's not going to be that valuable. Then people will go and start worrying about something else, like maybe taking a fight over the support camp or maybe just grabbing the enemy turret. One of my favorite strategies is right after the first objective, grab this camp so that the enemies get distracted and then head straight over to their turret camp. This will make it to where they will see something up here, they'll send a couple of people here, and you have 5 people ready to fight on their turret camp. Oftentimes, people will be going for this turret camp already, and so they'll be a little bit lower when you go up there. As far as red team, they actually had a really good position here, and they were able to take our fountain, even though they didn't get it with the objective. And it is, again, we know what we're supposed to be doing on this map. They're playing it out really well. They have someone double soaking the lanes, which is even better. So they will be able to hit level 10s before us. They've got 3 kills on us. They've got structures on us, and they've got fountains on us, and they've been double soaking really efficiently. So it's going to be a challenging game, to say the least. However, looking at the map, some of the things that we might want to be picking up right now is a turret, because it's safe for us to be picking up a turret. We're probably going to have to give up our top lane anyways. We may end up going for something, but we'll have to see. But primarily, we don't really want to be taking too many fights, since I don't really have an ult yet. I'm playing Joanna. I don't have an engage, so I really don't need to be there. Our Keldazad isn't quite stacked yet, so we don't really have that either. Really gonna be challenging, but once we have clone to clone the Arthas, as well as we've got my ult to lock people down long enough for a Keldazad to go in, it's gonna be rather easy to drop people. So you should be primarily focusing on getting your turret every single time that this camp is available. You should be getting your siege camp only in the times when you feel like you can get value out of it. If you don't expect to get value out of it in the next 3 minutes, feel free to just pick it up whenever you want to, as it's just extra experience. The support camp is something that you should always have a couple people near, which is why it's very common on this map to have the solo lane in the bottom lane, then have your 4-man go from mid to top repeatedly. As long as you can do that, you're in a really good spot. Next objective always goes from mid, top, bot, mid, top, bot, over and over and over. We're going to fast forward up until this top objective, and we'll talk a little bit further when the objective is actually picked up. What I recommend is if you ever want to just hold the objective as a tank, if you're really winning, you can stand right here. But if you're ever on a competitive team and you're on blue team, you should have your tank standing here and then the rest of your damage kind of around in this corner. The reason for this is because if you push too far forward, then all the fights are going to happen near the enemy's turrets, and then you're going to lose all these fights because you're taking so much unnecessary damage. Which is why most of the time, unless you're really playing aggressive or you really need to push them off of the point, if you're holding the point, you should simply just stay in this little corner right here. For this case, I wanted to stay near my team as they were fighting at the turret, but I was recommending that they just take a couple steps back because we don't really want to be there. As you can see, I might reposition back further over here when the enemies start showing up so we can fight closer to our base and further away from theirs. If the fight's happening over here, then it's hard for them to push us off because we're so close to our turrets and they're so far from their fountains that we can oftentimes get kills. When you already grab a decent chunk of this, if your team's all backing, feel free to give it up for a little bit. This is one of those objectives where you can give up a decent chunk of the objective and come back later. It's one of the best objectives to actually do that, because if you stay there while your team's getting soak or just trying to hit a talent tier, then you're going to likely just die out of position. Focusing on peel is going to be something you're going to see here and there for me, just because they do a lot of damage to our backline. We are going against some masters and grandmasters in this game, so it is just something that we need to still play pretty safe. There is that heal camp that I was talking about. It is a lot of healing. You can see it's very hard to take out both of these people. Very hard to take out just about anyone. We did this pretty good fight for us, but in general, it still was really, really hard to win. Because not only were we able to get some really great blinds, some really great value, but it does heal for a lot, does give them a lot of mana. Normally, you're going to win under a healing camp unless the enemies have some major advantage. For example, a great advantage that we had right there is they were sitting in an ult from the white main. A Divine Reckoning can pretty much out-heal anything. So we Divine Reckoning'd right on the heal camp, making it to where we actually were out-healing their own heal camp, as well as even further on top of that. So there are ways to play around it. As far as the objective, when you get to the second objective of the game, because of the scaling, there's a variety of tools that you can use. One of the things that I like to do first on the second objective is quickly grab the fort. You can almost always grab the fort really, really fast in the second objective, and then still make it down here and destroy the fountain. You can see that. Now, as I'm destroying this fort, I'm going to talk a little bit about the abilities. You can see that the structure is not shooting right now, and that's because your W does turn off the structures. And they did change your W around, if you haven't played in a while, to where it pushes enemies instead of actually stunning them or rooting them. So you will push heroes and you will turn off structures. Your Q, like I said, does, in this case it is an older patch, but does 500% increased damage to structures, non-heroes. So you can either wipe an entire wave with this, or you can do a lot of damage to something like a turret. As you can see, instantly did 40% of the health of the turret, and then I auto-attacked it to drop it down even quicker. Remember that the scaling is improved, so what you're seeing in this video is not necessarily what you will be seeing in-game. I just have been getting really unlucky and haven't had a Volskaya game since they've made this change. But that's pretty much it. Once you've destroyed the fountain and your teams are ready to fight, there are some things that you should know about each of the different abilities. Q, remember, it's primarily structure damage, but it's not bad if you need to quickly jump on someone and do an auto attack. W knocks someone away, so you want to be using this to get rid of maybe one of their tanks or one of their healers. E is going to give 1,000 health shield to everyone on your team and 25 armor to you. When you only have something like 20 seconds left on it and 40% health, I don't usually use this for armor. I use it primarily to save my team. But if you are pushing pretty far ahead and you're still high health, you can use this, and high timer. You can use this to mitigate the damage that you take. Just by having a gunner, you will have an extra 10 armor, though, which is kind of nice. So this is actually only increasing your armor by 15, as opposed to any more than that. When you go onto the gunner, on the other hand, there are other abilities. Your Q, the longer you charge this, it is going to charge a ball that will be able to fire off further for the longer you charge it, but its damage is not affected. So if you're ever on a structure and doing damage with this, activate it again just to throw it down. Your gunner is this pink bar that will increase as you're not casting it, and when you're casting it, it will decrease. This does half damage to structures, so it's best used on enemy heroes. It has a little bit of a delay, so you need to kind of fire it in front of where you think they're going to be going, or fire it on CC'd targets. Finally, you have the Scorching Laser, one of your highest burst abilities that makes it to where if you get hit by the second part of the line, you will take a huge amount of damage. How you should be playing the gunner 90% of the time is making sure that your Scorched Laser is used off cooldown, your Particle Cannon is used off cooldown, and while you're waiting for these cooldowns to come back, you're going to be firing your Gatling Cannon, primarily at heroes for the Gatling Cannon. As far as the Q and the E, whatever your priority is. In a fight like this, priority is heroes. If you're on structures and you destroy the well really quickly, then you're going to be using your Q and your E on well and your W on heroes. That's primarily how you want to be handling the gunner. So essentially, the driver should be focusing primarily on structures with the Q, blowing up the structures that you need to, and then using your shield to save your team, or mitigating damage if you're taking a lot when you're doing structures. Rocket Fist to knocking away the tank or turning off structures. And the gunner is primarily just using QE off cooldown and then W whenever you're waiting for cooldowns. The second that your Q's off cooldown, turn off W, fire a Q, and then go back to using W again. And it's pretty straightforward. As far as the driver, you should be prioritizing getting as many forts as you can in the first two objectives. And by the third objective, you should be trying to prioritize getting a keep. As long as you are winning a couple objectives, it's pretty straightforward on whether or not you're going to get those keeps. If you can just get a lot of forts, though, in the early game, you will lead to an experience lead for pretty much the rest of the game. And it's pretty straightforward. As this game's going on, I'm just going to fast forward so you can see how we lead to ending out the game faster. With the new scaling on the Volskaya things, and this is not even in this game, but in the new scaling, you should be able to take a keep by the third objective no matter which team you're on, and you should be trying to end the game on the fourth objective. If you can't close out the game by the fourth objective on Volskaya, something's definitely wrong. Don't forget that you don't need the objectives to push. If you ever have a good talent tier lead, you can always push for it, but I primarily try to get tools when you have leads. So I'll try to always get multiple turrets available and multiple heal camps available by the time the objectives spawn, and I try not to use them outside of the actual objective fights. If you have more items, you want to try to wait for objectives so you can drop all of your items and to win those objectives. However, if you are in a situation where you're just sitting here and you just need to win one of these fights, feel free to drop a couple items just so you can win the fights. In this case, we did drop a heal camp to keep everyone on our team alive. And make sure that you are paying attention to the heal camps. We had, for example, a white main who walked away from it and a Kel'Thuzad who walked away from it. Not a big deal. We pretty much dominated in that team fight, but it is something to think about. Same deal on this map. If you happen to use people who have ways to win specific objectives, for example, say you have a clone that you can use for objectives, or you have a Odin that can win objectives, you want to try not to use them on fights outside of objectives, because when these objectives start, you want to make sure that you have that clone available for the objective. You have Odin available for the objective, maybe a dragon if you're playing Alex Straza. All of those need to be available for the objective. The next thing to note, try to get as many free points as you can. Try not to use your ults until you need to push someone back off of the point. Say the enemies are about to hit 99%, use all your ults so you can push them off of the point. Then hold on to the point for a while and try to get your ults back. If you're at 99%, try to use your ults to keep the enemies off the point so they can't contest it and you win the next objective. From this point on, we pretty much just fast forward. This third objective of the game is strong enough you can usually clean out a game, especially when you have a 3-level lead. 15 minutes, it's going to be doing a ton of damage. If you saw, I did about 60% of the health. I did pop a armor before I got hit by that pyroblast, so I took 35% less damage, and we continued on. If you can see something really quick, I do go to peel back from my team when I am in the protector, primarily because this is the best way to defend against the enemies having a protector, is to wipe their team while they're in the protector. And in this case, that's essentially what they're trying to do. They are wiping our team while we're in the protector. We have an amazing white main heal that pretty much takes their team, wipes it out, saves the person that got thrown, and we go right back onto structures again. Using my Q, you can see this giant burst damage that we're able to just shell through a keep very, very quickly. And we kind of just wipe through that. Now, I take a step back so I can drop Abathur off, because you can press your trait to get out of the protector, or it might be R button, I can't remember. One of the buttons gets you out of the protector. So I dropped him off so that we didn't have the Abathur popping up when it was over. We use our clone to then slow and peel for the backline while we have someone else dive in, and we close out this game without a protector. Because guys, you don't actually need a protector to close out the game. If you have an advantage, feel free to use that advantage. Just make sure that you guys are paying attention and calculating the risks of closing out the game early. And that's essentially it. That's how I recommend playing the new Volskaya using a little bit of psychology. Thank you guys for watching, and feel free to check out my other videos.